Greetings, family. Welcome back to another teaching with the way everlasting. I pray that the Most High is increasing you wherever you are in the world, that He is increasing you in truth, wisdom, and understanding, and that He is providing for you, especially in these times that we are in. As promised, I'm going to be continuing Gospel or Gospels. This is the revised version of part two. Gospel or Gospels, have we been enslaved through a false gospel and Messiah? And this one is going to be a very good one, as you know, even part one, I believe, was a very good one, very enlightening. I'm hoping this will be just as well for you, and it should be. Um, but as you know, this is about testing Jesus, Yeshua, Yahusha, Yahawashai, Yesiah, whatever you call the New Testament Messiah. We are basically testing the doctrine as we should before just believing anything. We are testing the doctrine to see if it lines up with the scriptures. In particularly, we are looking at the Old Testament prophecies that have been attributed or connected to the New Testament Messiah to see if those prophecies were really speaking of him or were they speaking of somebody else in another time period, and were those prophecies fulfilled already? Now, why are we asking or looking up in particularly were they fulfilled already? We are looking that up because of sayings like this from Matthew chapter 1, verse 22, where it says, "Now all this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of the Most High by the prophet, saying." Okay, so it said, "Now all this was done that it might be fulfilled." All right, now if you put two and two together, obviously that would lead you to believe that there were things that were not fulfilled until this point in the New Testament, right? In Mark 14, verses 48 through 49, it says, "And Jesus answered and said unto them, Are you come out as against a thief with swords and with staves to take me? I was daily with you in the temple teaching, and you took me not. But the scriptures must be fulfilled." All right. So once again, saying that, they must take him in order to fulfill the scriptures. All right. Luke 24:44, it says, "And he said unto them, These are the words which I spake unto you while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled which were written in the law of Moses and in the prophets and in the Psalms concerning me." All right. So once again, the New Testament Messiah, or whatever you call him, is saying that these things that were written in the law of Moses and in the prophets and the Psalms were concerning him. So the question is, were these things really concerning him, or were they concerning somebody else in a different time period? And were they already fulfilled? All right. And the last one is Matthew 26, verses 53 through 54. And it says, Thinkest, thinkest that, thinkest thou that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then shall the scriptures be fulfilled that thus it must be? So basically, him once again saying that he must be taken in order for the scriptures to be fulfilled. All right. So we're going to be examining these Old Testament prophecies, which are being connected to him, and looking at them in context to see if they were fulfilled already in a different time period by somebody else who was meant to fulfill those prophecies. All right. So the New Testament prophecies, which we're going to be looking at today, which the Messiah supposedly fulfilled, are Matthew 4, Matthew chapter 4, verses 13 through 16, which comes from Isaiah chapter 9, verses 1 through 2, which says, "The people which sat in darkness saw a great light." All right. The next one we're going to be looking at is Micah chapter 5, verse 1 in the Brenton Greek Septuagint, verse 2 in your KJV, which says, "Out of Judah one shall come forth to be ruler over Israel, and his goings forth were from the beginning, even from eternity. All right, especially that last half, we're going to really focus on that, and make sure that we get clarity to, and his goings forth were from the beginning, even from eternity. All right, and Isaiah 9, chapter 9, verses 5. All right, verses 6 in your KJV, it says, "Unto us a child is born, a son is given." All right, so we're going to bring clarity. We're going to look at all these things and put this all together in proper context and see who this was talking about. So remember, folks, context is key. All right, context is clarity. So we must be clear on these things. All right, that is what context means. Context is clarity. All right, it is using the scriptures that proceed, or it is our statements that proceed to bring clarity and context. In this case, we're going to try to use the scripture to bring as much clarity as possible. All right, so first we're going to be establishing a timeline, all right, for the proper context. For the Isaiah and Micah prophecies, we're going to be establishing the timeline for the Isaiah and Micah prophecies, since those are what we're going to be dealing with. All right. And in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 1, it says, "The vision which Isaiah the son of Amos saw, which he saw against Judah and against Jerusalem in the reign of Ozias and Jotham and Ahaz and Ezekias, who reigned over Judea." All right, so notice these are the kings who reigned one after another over Judea. And this is the time frame Isaiah is prophesying in. In Micah chapter 1, verse 1, it says, "And the word of the Most High came to Micah, the son of Moratzi, in the days of Jotham and Ahaz and Ezekias, kings of Judah, concerning what he saw regarding Samaria and Jerusalem." All right, so notice both of these prophets, Isaiah and Micah, were prophesying in the time of King Jotham, Ahaz, and Ezekias. This is the time period they're prophesying in. All right. So because we will be dealing with the prophets prophesying during the times of the kings that were just mentioned, we will be using the book of Second Kings in your KJV, Fourth Kings in your Brenton Greek Septuagint, and Second Chronicles, since these books are connected to this time period. All right. The book of Second Kings or Fourth Kings in your Brenton and Second Chronicles, these are connected to the time periods when Isaiah and Micah are prophesying. One example is in Second Chronicles chapter 32, verse 20. It says, "And King Ezekias and Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, prayed concerning these things, and they cried to heaven." All right, showing you that King Ezekias and Isaiah the prophet were together. All right, working together. All right, praying together. So that just shows you, that's just one example. All right, but I just want to give the proper understanding that when you read the book of Second Chronicles and Second Kings, you have to understand what time period you're dealing with, who's prophesying in this time period. All right, because it's all connected. So Isaiah and Micah are intertwined with Chronicles and Kings, Second Chronicles and Second Kings or Fourth Kings in your Brenton Greek Septuagint. All right, so now that we've established that, let's go on and get to the first prophecy. All right, we're going to look at Matthew chapter 4, verse 13 through 16. All right, and this prophecy was taken from Isaiah chapter 9, verses 1 through 2. "The people which sat in darkness saw a great light." All right, so looking at the verse in Matthew, starting in verse 13, it says, "And leaving Nazareth," this is Joseph leaving Nazareth with Mary and Yeshua, Jesus, Yehoshua, Yahushai. All right. "And leaving Nazareth, he came and dwelt in Capernaum, which is upon the sea coast, in the borders of Zabulon and Naphtali, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, The land of Zabulon and the land of Naphtali, by the way of the sea, beyond Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people which sat in darkness saw a great light, and to them which sat in the region and shadow of death, light is sprung up. So basically, this was saying that because Yeshua, Yehoshua, Yahushai, Jesus, all right, because uh, he came to this region, this area, all right, with Joseph, his father, and Mary's mother, that to live there, all right, that this prophecy was now fulfilled because he was the great light, right? So now we're going to look at where this prophecy comes from, all right, and it starts in the Brenton Greek Septuagint. It starts in Isaiah 23, which it will start in Isaiah 9:1 if you're in the KJV. All right, but starting in Isaiah 23, Isaiah 8:23, forgive me, Isaiah 8:23, it says, "Drink this first, act quickly, O land of Zebulun, land of Naphtali, and the rest inhabiting the sea coast, and the land beyond Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. O people walking in darkness, behold a great light. You that dwell in the region and shadow of death, a light shall shine upon you." Now, one thing I just want to point out is that number one, if you guys, I don't know if you guys noticed the difference, but it says in here in verse 1, right on the bottom, it says, "O people walking in darkness," right? Now, if we go back to what it said in Matthew, it said in verse 16, "The people which sat in darkness." All right, sitting and walking are two different things. I just wanted to point that out, that obviously already there's an error. And I know you may say, oh, well, that's because you're reading from the Brenton Greek Septuagint. Well, if we even check the KJV, if you look at verse 2, it says, "The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them has the light shined." This is Isaiah 9, verse 2. Okay, so it literally says that they walked in darkness. I don't know where sitting came from, but somehow scripture's already been twisted. So, with that being said, of course, that's not my main objective to show you. All right, but we're just going to be examining these things further to see and break down this prophecy, right? So it's talking about a great light. These people who are walking in darkness, seeing a great light. All right. So the question is, why are the people walking in darkness? Why are they walking in darkness, right? So looking at Isaiah chapter 8, verse 21 through 23, it says, "And famine shall come sorely upon you, and it shall come to pass that when you shall be hungry, you shall be grieved, and you shall speak ill of the prince and your father's ordinances, and they shall look up to heaven above, and they shall look on the earth below, and behold, severe distress and darkness, affliction and anguish, and darkness so that one cannot see. And he that is in anguish shall not be distressed only for a time. Drink this first, act quickly, O land of Zebulun, land of Naphtali, and the rest inhabiting the seacoast, and the land beyond Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles." Okay, so notice in 21 it said, "And famine shall come sorely upon you, and it shall come to pass that when you shall be hungry, you shall be grieved." All right, you shall be grieved, and you shall speak ill of the prince and your father's ordinances, and they shall look up to heaven above, and they shall look on the earth below, and behold, severe distress and darkness, affliction and anguish and darkness, so that one cannot see. Okay, so basically, because of this famine, number one, all right, this is what's going to be the source of their darkness, famine and distress, right? For those who saw part one, you know that this was dealing with the coming captivity as well of the Assyrians, right? The Assyrians were coming. The Most High pronounced that the Assyrians would come and take Israel captive. All right. So this is just a continuance of that. And then it says, continuing in Isaiah 9:1-2, it says, O people walking in darkness, behold a great light. You that dwell in the region and shadow of death, a light shall shine upon you. The multitude of the people which thou hast brought down in thy joy, they shall even rejoice before thee, as they that rejoice in harvest, and as they that divide the spoil. So, number one, what was the walking in darkness? They were walking because of famine, and they were going to be distressed and grieved. That is the darkness. All right. And then we see it says, behold, a great light. You that dwell in the region and shadow of death, a light shall shine upon you. The multitude, now this is important, the multitude of the people which thou hast brought down in thy joy, they shall even rejoice before thee, as they that rejoice in harvest, and as they that divide the spoils. Now, who are these people which they had brought down? Remember, in part one, we showed you how the two kings, the king of Syria, all right, which was also Aram, right? The king of Aram, or the king of Syria, which was Razin. That is the name of the king of Syria. It was Razin. And Pake, the king of Israel. Remember, they went up to war against Judah, and they sieged Judah. So when he's saying in verse 2, the multitude of the people which thou hast brought down in thy joy, he's talking about Judah. And then he says, they shall even rejoice before thee, as they that rejoice in harvest, and as they that divide the spoils. All right. So this has something to do with the light that is coming. All right. So we're going to continue to break that down, but I just wanted to lay that for you so that this makes sense. All right. So Israel were the people walking in darkness because they forsook the law of the Most High and were about to experience a famine, not to mention they were going to be carried away into captivity. All right. So now the question is, what is the great light? What is the great light? All right. In Isaiah chapter 9, verse 1-2, O people walking in darkness, behold a great light. You that dwell in the region and shadow of death, a light shall shine upon you. The multitude of thy people, which thou hast brought down in thy joy, they shall even rejoice before thee, as they that rejoice in harvest, and as they that divide the spoil. Because the yoke that was laid upon them has been taken away, and the rod that was on their neck, for he has broken the rod of the exactors, as in the day of Madiam. For they shall compensate for every garment that has been acquired by deceit, and all raiment with restitution. And they shall be willing, even if they were burnt with fire. So, what is the great light? The great light is speaking about a deliverance, all right, that Israel was going to see a deliverance, all right. Israel was going to see a deliverance. And this is, and as you can see in verse 3, it says, because the yoke that was laid upon them has been taken away. All right. So that's connecting back to them being led away captive. All right. Now we're going to have to dig a little bit deeper, right? Because the yoke that was laid upon them. Now we're going to have to dig a little bit deeper and ask the question, whose yoke was laid upon them? Whose yoke was laid upon Judah? Right? Whose yoke was laid upon Judah? Right? And also Israel. So Isaiah 10:5-7, it says, woe to the Assyrians, the rod of my wrath and anger are in their hands. I will send my wrath against a sinful nation, and I will charge my people to take plunder and spoil, and to trample the cities, and to make them dust. But he meant not thus, neither did he devise thus in his soul, but his mind shall change, and that to destroy nations, not a few. Continuing in Isaiah chapter 10, verse 24 through 27, it says, Therefore, thus saith the Most High of hosts, Be not afraid, my people who dwell in Sion, of the Assyrians, because he shall smite thee with a rod. For I am bringing a stroke upon thee, that thou mayest see the way of Egypt. For yet a little while, and the indignation shall cease, but my wrath shall be against their counsel. And the Most High will stir up enemies against them according to the stroke of Madiam in the place of affliction. And his wrath shall be by the way of the sea, even to the way that leads to Egypt. And it shall come to pass in that day that his yoke shall be taken away from thy shoulder, and his fear from thee, and the yoke shall be destroyed from off your shoulders. All right. So we seen earlier was mentioning a yoke. All right. Being taken away from Judah. And here he's confirming it. All right. Notice in verse 24, he says, Be not afraid, my people who dwell in Sion, of the Assyrians. So my people who dwell in Sion, who dwelled in Zion? Well, Jerusalem was in Mount Zion. Guess who dwelled in Jerusalem? Judah. All right. So Judah was dwelling in Jerusalem. So that shows you that he's talking about Judah there. All right. But like I said, not just Judah, as well as we're going to read in 4th Kings or 2nd Kings in your KJV, chapter 15, verse 29. It says, In the days of Pake, king of Israel, came Dalgath, Pelasar, king of the Assyrians, and took Ain and Abel and Thamaka and Antioch and Kenez and Asor and Gala and Galilee, even all the land of Naphtali, and carried them away to the Assyrians. So Israel was also carried away to the Assyrians. All right. Because they were the ones dwelling in Galilee and Naphtali. All right. So we see now all this is dealing with the Assyrians' yoke that is going to be broken. All right. But that is whose yoke was upon Israel and whose yoke was upon Judah. All right. So now the next question is, who was to bring this great light or deliverance? Right. Because that is exactly what the light was. The light was deliverance. So who is to bring this great light or deliverance? Now we're going to include Micah, because like I said, Micah and Isaiah were prophesying during the same time period. And this is very important. All right. So we're going to be looking at Micah chapter 5, verse 1 or verse 2 in your KJV. Out of Judah, one shall come forth to be ruler over Israel, and is going forth were from the beginning, even from eternity. All right. So now let's look at Micah chapter 5. We're going to read verses 1 through 5, which is 2 through 6 in your KJV. And it says, And thou, Bethlehem, house of Ephrathah, art few in number, to be reckoned among the thousands of Judah. Yet out of thee shall one come forth to me, to be a ruler of Israel. And his goings forth were from the beginning, even from eternity. All right, now, like I said, we're going to touch on that. But before we do, we're going to continue to read so we get context of who this person is that's being spoken of here. All right. So it says, Therefore shall he appoint them to wait till the time of her that travails. She shall bring forth, and then the remnant of their brethren shall return to the children of Israel. And the Most High shall stand and see and feed his flock with power, and they shall dwell in the glory of the name of the Most High, their power. For now shall they be magnified to the ends of the earth. And she shall have peace when Asher shall come into your land, and when he shall come up upon your country, and there shall be raised up against him 7 shepherds and 8 attacks of men, and they shall tend the Assyrian with a sword, and the land of Nebrod with her trench, and he shall deliver you from the Assyrians. I'm going to read that one more time. And he shall deliver you from the Assyrians when he shall come upon your land and when he shall invade your coast. So this individual who was just mentioned over here, when he says, yet out of thee one shall come forth to me to be ruler of Israel, and his going forth were from the beginning, even from eternity. Look at what it says here. And he shall deliver you from the Assyrian when he shall come upon your land and when he shall invade your coast. So what are we looking for? We are looking for somebody who's going to deliver the people, Israel and Judah, from the Assyrians. This is who is being mentioned in Micah. All right, in Micah 5:1 or 5:2, this is who is being mentioned, the one that is going to deliver them from the Assyrians. Okay, so we have to connect these things and keep them together. All right, keep that in mind. This is what the Messiah or the Savior is going to do. The Messiah or anointed one during this time, this is what he's going to do. He's going to deliver Judah and Israel from the Assyrians, and he's going to bring Israel back to the land. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to break down his going forth from the beginning, even from eternity. We're going to break this down because I know this is where people are saying this is the Messiah of the New Testament, right? Talking about John chapter 1, verse 1. All right, well, we're going to break this down and get clarity on this. All right, so looking at this word, right? What we're gonna do is we're gonna go to Bible Hub. This is BibleHub.com, where you can get the Strong's Concordance, where you can break these words that are in English. You can get the Hebrew words, and you can get the full meaning of the words by looking at the Hebrew. All right, the Hebrew origins. So we're gonna read this real quick in the third column. It says, "The one to be ruler in Israel, and whose goings forth are from of old, from everlasting." Now, this word everlasting is where a lot of people are going to have the issue. So we look to the left of everlasting, and it says olam, where it has the Hebrew writing. The word there is olam. That's the word used for everlasting. All right. You look to the first column one more time to the left, and you're going to see Strong's number 5769. That is the Strong's number for the word olam, 5769. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down the word olam. So 5769, olam. We're going to look at the definition of the word, all right, which you see right under where it says Strong's Concordance. It says olam, and then it says long duration, antiquity, futurity. All right, those are the meanings. Those are the definitions: long duration, antiquity, futurity, olam. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to look and see how was this word translated into English. All right, how did they translate this word into English? All right, so under where it says word origin, under where it says definition and NASB translation, we see all the different types of ways it was translated. All right, so it was translated as ages. All right, and you can see the number next to it, how many times it was translated as that word. All right, so we have ages, all successive, always, ancient, ancient times, continual, days of old, eternal, eternity, ever, everlasting, everlasting, forever, forever and ever, forever, forevermore, lasting, Long, long ago, long past, long time, never, old, permanent, permanently, perpetual, and perpetually. All right, these are all the different words that the word olam has been translated into. So if we can sum this up, which is for me, um, I would say speaking on long ago, I think that would be a more simple understanding of the word for long ago, for ancient times, from ancient times, right? Um, and so that for me is that for me is that I should just say we see it translated in different ways throughout the scripture. Why they chose right here to put everlasting or eternity, that's up to the translators. All right. But one thing I do want to break down is to bring clarity when it talks about being from eternity or everlasting or from long ago or ancient, however we can break it down to help it make sense. Let's look at Jeremiah chapter 1, verses 4 through 5. All right, this is Jeremiah 1, 4 through 5. It says, and the word of the Most High came to him, saying, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth from the womb, I sanctified thee. I appointed thee a prophet to the nations. All right, so now look at what he said in verse 5. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. That means before he was even conceived, before the sperm met the egg, the Most High knew him. That's knowing somebody from everlasting or from eternity. That's knowing beforehand, from long ago. All right. The Most High knew Jeremiah, the prophet, before he was even conceived in the womb. All right. So, and then he says, and before thou camest forth from the womb, I sanctified thee. I appointed thee a prophet to the nations. So before he was even came out the womb, he already had a job to do. The Most High already knew what this man was going to do. So he knew him. We could say the same thing about Jeremiah. The Most High knew Jeremiah from the beginning, even from eternity. Before he was even conceived, he already knew Jeremiah and appointed Jeremiah to be a prophet and sanctified Jeremiah. Okay, so when we talk about this, we can't just say, oh, because he said his going forth, his going forth were from the beginning, even from eternity, that this is talking about the Messiah of the New Testament. Because if that's the case, you could say Jeremiah was the Messiah, but nobody's going to make that argument. All right. So understanding what he meant, all right, is that he just knew him from before he was even formed. All right. This prophet being spoken about in Micah chapter 5, the Most High knew before he was even formed, conceived. He knew him from the beginning, from eternity, from Olam, from a long time ago, from ancient days. He already knew him before he was even conceived. All right. So let's keep that in mind as we continue. All right. So now, who delivered, right? Because we talked about that there needed to be a deliverance, right? That this person who was from the beginning, right? From eternity, that they were to deliver the people from the Assyrians during this time. So the question is, who delivered the people from the Assyrians during this time? All right. We're going to go to Isaiah chapter 9, verse 5, which is Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6 in your KJV. And it says, unto us a child is born, a son is given. All right. For a child is born to us, and a son is given to us, whose government is upon his shoulders, and his name is called the Messenger of Great Counsel. For I will bring peace upon the princes and health to him. His government shall be great, and of his peace there is no end. It shall be upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to establish it and to support it with judgment and with righteousness from henceforth and forever. The zeal of the Most High of hosts shall perform this. Now, once again, that word forever is olam. All right. And remember, we talked about antiquity or futurity. So from henceforth and forever can be for a long time. Okay. And I actually broke that down in another video dealing with the word forever, connecting it to Exodus, I think it's chapter 20 or 21, when the servant that wants to serve his master forever, he gets an awe in his ear. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to serve him just forever and ever and ever. It just means until the end of his life. So it's the same thing here. It can mean to the end of one's life. All right. So one thing I want to keep in mind and point out is, notice it said, it shall be upon the throne of David. So that means that we're looking for somebody who's coming from the lineage of David. All right. But it continues to say in Isaiah chapter 10, verses 5-7, woe to the Assyrians, the rod of my wrath and anger are in their hands. I will send my wrath against a sinful nation, and I will charge my people to take plunder and spoil, and to trample the cities, and to make them dust. But he meant not thus, neither did he devise thus in his soul, but his mind shall change, and that to destroy nations, not a few. Okay, so this is talking about the Messiah as well, who was just mentioned. All right, the Savior during this time period. All right, so who is this individual? Right, we're gonna read Fourth Kings, which is Second Kings in your KJV, chapter 18, verses 1-6. It says, and it came to pass in the 3rd year of Hosea, son of Elah, king of Israel, that Ezekias, son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign. 25 years old was he when he began to reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Abu, daughter of Zacharias. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Most High, according to all that his father David did. So David is his father, but it said before that he was the son of Ahaz. It said Ezekias, the son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign. So how did David become his father? Oh, that's because he's from the lineage of David. If you track it back from Ezekias to Ahaz to Jotham, and you go all the way back up, you'll end up getting back to David. So he's being established on the throne of David, which was mentioned in what we just read from Isaiah chapter 9, that he would be established on the throne of David. All right. So we're going to stop right there, right here, and we're going to continue to the next one, because we're going to come back to what else is brought up there. All right. In Fourth Kings chapter, same chapter, looking at verses 5-6, though, it says, he trusted in the Most High, the power, the God of Israel. And after him, there was not any like him among the kings of Judah, nor among those that were before him. So this just said that Ezekias was the greatest king to rule from Judah. It said that there was none like him. After him, there was none like him. And before, there was none like him, which means he was a greater king than King David. So if there's anyone you want to strive to be like, it's King Ezekiah, or Hezekiah, as you'll see in your KJV. And it says in verse 6, and he clave to the Most High, he departed not from following him, and he kept his commandments, as many as he commanded Moses. All right. We're going to continue in verse 7, which is highlighted. It says, and the Most High was with him, and he was wise in all that he undertook. And he revolted from the king of the Assyrians and served him not. So who revolted? So remember, we were looking for a Messiah who was going to revolt from the king of the Assyrians. We were looking for someone who was going to be a savior, who was going to revolt from the king of the Assyrians. All right. And that is Ezekiah. He was anointed to be king. He was the Messiah. And it says that he revolted from the king of the Assyrians and served him not. Okay. It says he smote the Philistines even to Gaza and to the border of it, from the tower of the watchman even to the strong city. So now Ezekiah is beginning to deliver his people. He is a Messiah. He is the Savior. All right. And he is lining up so far with the prophecy. All right. It says in Second Chronicles chapter 32, verses 20 through 23, and King Ezekias and Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, prayed concerning these things, and they cried to heaven, and the Most High sent an angel, and he destroyed every mighty man and warrior and leader and captain in the camp of the king of Assyria. And he returned with shame of face to his own land and came into the house of his God. And some of them that came out of his bowels slew him with the sword. His own children slew him with the sword. All right. And the Most High just helped Ezekias defeat and deliver Israel and Judah from the Assyrians. All right. Verse 22. So the Most High delivered Ezekiah and the dwellers in Jerusalem out of the hand of Sennacherib, king of Assyria, and out of the hand of all his enemies, and gave them rest round about. And many brought gifts to the Most High to Jerusalem and presents to Ezekiah, king of Judah. And he was exalted in the eyes of all the nations after these things. Okay, so remember it said that the zeal of the Most High shall perform this, right? And what do we see here that the Most High sent angels to help destroy the Assyrians. All right, he sent angels. All right, after hearing Ezekiah and Isaiah's prayers, he sent angels to help destroy the Assyrians. So we see that this is coming to fruition. This prophecy, this person that was spoken of, is beginning to stand out more and more. All right. Another part of the Micah 5 prophecy, because we can't just take one little bit, we got to try to keep everything in context. So looking at verses 9 through 14, it said, and it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Most High, that I will utterly destroy the horses out of the midst of thee, and destroy thy chariots, and I will utterly destroy the cities of thy land, and demolish all thy strongholds. And I will utterly destroy thy sorceries out of thine hands, and there shall be no soothsayers in thee. And I will utterly destroy thy graven images and thy statutes out of the midst of thee. And thou shalt never any more worship the works of thine hands. And I will cut off the groves out of the midst of thee, and I will abolish thy cities, and I will execute vengeance on the heathen in anger and wrath, because they hearkened not. Okay, so now who did this? Let's look once again at 4 Kings chapter 18, verses 1 through 8. All right, we know this is dealing with Ezekiah, as you can see in verse 1, but we're going to jump down to verse 4. It says, he removed the high places and broke in pieces the pillars and utterly destroyed the groves and the brazen serpent which Moses made, because until those days the children of Israel burnt incense to it, and he called it Neestan. All right, so King Ezekiah, it says he removed the high places and broke in pieces the pillars and utterly destroyed the groves. This is exactly what the Most High just said he was going to do. I'll just backtrack so we can see it. He said in verse 11, and I will utterly destroy thy sorceries out of thy hand. There shall be no soothsayers in thee, and I will utterly destroy thy graven images and thy statues out of the midst of thee. And thou shalt never any more worship the works of thy hands, I will cut off the groves out of the midst of thee, and I will abolish the cities. All right. Notice it said, he removed the high places and broke in pieces the pillars and utterly destroyed the groves and the brazen serpent which Moses made, the graven image. Okay. So we can see these things happening through who? King Ezekias, son of Ahaz, king of Judah. Okay. Confirmation, Second Chronicles chapter 31, verses 1 through 2. It says, and when all these things were finished, all Israel that were found in the cities of Judah went out and broke in pieces the pillars and cut down the groves, tore down the high places and the altars out of all Judea and Benjamin, also of Ephraim and Manasseh, till they made an end. And all Israel returned, everyone to his inheritance and to their cities. This was also a part of the prophecy connected to the child. All right. This deliverance, the great light, all this is connected. All right. And Ezekias appointed the courses of the priest and the Levites and the courses of each one according to his ministry, to the priest and to the Levites, for the whole burnt offering and for the peace offering, and to praise and to give thanks and to minister in the gates and in the courts of the house of the Most High. So, as you guys can see here, this prophecy, right, has been almost fully complete. We're just about there with everything dealing with Micah. All right, with the prophecy from Micah, we're there. All right, now we want to finish off with Isaiah 9, another part of the Isaiah 9 prophecy, right? Notice in verse 6, all right, well, verse 5, it said, unto us a child is born and a son is given, whose government is upon his shoulders, and his name is called the messenger of great counsel. For I will bring peace upon the princes and health to him. His government shall be great, and of his peace there is no end. Now, the Most High has already talked about him giving him peace in Israel, peace round about, right? But now he says his government shall be great, and of his peace there is no end. It shall be established upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to establish it and support it with judgment and with righteousness from henceforth and forever. All right. So Second Chronicles chapter 32, verses 27 through 28. And Ezekias had wealth and very great glory, and he made for himself treasures of gold and silver and precious stones, also for spices and stores for arms and for precious vessels and cities for the produce of corn and wine and oil, and stalls and managers for every kind of cattle, and folds for flocks, and cities which he built for himself, and store of sheep and oxen in abundance. For the Most High gave him a very great store. So, in order for somebody to have a great government, you must have one, you must have the economy, right? All right. You must have substance and value, which the Most High says. It says he gave him treasures of gold, right? And silver and precious stones. That's wealth. All right. And then you need the substance to um, produce livestock. You need those things. So he had those things, and said he had a great store. The Most High gave him a very great store. So that is pretty much what you need to have. In addition to ruling in righteousness, you need these things to maintain a stable society, a stable rulership, or a stable government. All right. And the Most High gave him all these things. So we see here pretty much that in Micah 5 and Isaiah 9, that all those things that were prophesied about the child that is born, the son that is given, all right, and the one who comes from everlasting, who is to deliver his people from the Assyrians, that the Most High has done all those things through Ezekias. All right. And that is who was mentioned. All right. What we see in the New Testament, we do not see Yeshua, Jesus, Yahushai, Yesiah, Yehoshua. We don't see him deliver anybody from the hands of the Assyrians because they weren't supposedly in captivity to the Assyrians. They were being ruled over by Rome. So this prophecy couldn't fit him. Anyways, the Micah prophecy couldn't fit him. All right. That couldn't happen. All right. It wouldn't make sense. All right. And then when we see as well, we look at Isaiah chapter 9. All right. That prophecy itself wouldn't fit him either. All right. There's so much more we have to look into these prophecies to get the full context because they were dealing with the Assyrians and getting yokes removed and broken off of them. That's why it couldn't have been the Messiah of the New Testament. All right, because he doesn't fit it. He didn't do the things that they said that the Old Testament, the prophets said were spoken of by those people. All right, family. So we have to begin to make sure we understand these scriptures and look at these things in context. We have to make sure that we are not being led astray by people who are teaching false doctrine. All right. As I mentioned in part 1, all right, the New Testament was created to be a rebuttal, to be against the Old Testament, because they wanted to make these people that are the Jews, that are the real Jews who are warriors for righteousness, when they understand what the Most High's will is, that they are people who stand up against wickedness and evil, as we seen King Ezekiah do and King David do, right? They stand up against wickedness. But the New Testament teaches you to be passive, teaches you to love your enemy, teaches you to bless those that curse you, teaches you to pray for those which despitefully use you and persecute you. That is not how we are to operate. All right. That is not how we are to operate. We are to stand up for righteousness. We are to stand up, as it says, I believe in Isaiah, or maybe the book of Jeremiah, but it says to rebuke the oppressor, to rebuke the oppressor, not to stand there and take oppression, not to pray for those that are despitefully using you, or to yeah, it doesn't say, like, that's not what it says. It says to rebuke the oppressor. You can look it up. Just do a quick search on rebuke the oppressor. All right, that verse will probably come up. So we are to stand up for righteousness. And the New Testament teaches you to be passive, teaches you to, get smacked on one cheek, turn your other cheek. Nah, that's not how our ancestors got down. That's not how the Jews got down. And when you connect these prophecies to actually who they are meant for, then you will see that this New Testament is flawed and erred and is a creation of those that want to oppress people. All right. For those who have seen my video, do they really fear him, or do they really fear God? It talked about the colonization and the missionaries. Go check that out if you haven't, because it'll give you an understanding of what they were using Christianity for. All right. So my family, I hope that this video was enlightening to you. I hope it brought clarity. I hope it brought the context you needed to see who these prophecies were actually meant for. So that exactly who these prophecies were meant for and who fulfilled them. All right. So what I'm going to say now is thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share this video with those that need to see this, because this is important information. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at THEWAYEVERLASTING8@gmail.com, and I will be happy to answer your questions. And if I don't have the answer, of course, I'll reach out to those that I trust and get the answers for you. All right, family. So until next time, take care. May the Most High increase you in all truth, wisdom, and understanding. May He provide for you in these times that we are in and protect you and give you all that you need. All right. So until next time, family, be increased.